Hello. We've got Plum Market people on. We've got Grand Rapids guests on. We've got Chicago guests on, and we're going to have Greece on momentarily.
Awesome.
So thank you for reminding everyone what our connection is. We did meet several years ago, I think working for the collaborating on the initial Uncork for a Cure event, right?
That's what I was just saying. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just saying how we met each other. And so.
So we, for me, having been a sommelier for more decades than I care to admit, starting at the inception of the Renaissance Center downtown, moving to the London Chop House, and then working for Jimmy Schmidt and all of his restaurants, Matt Prentice, and finally I transitioned officially to retail about 10 years ago, but in my heart, I'm still a restaurant person. I love collaborating with Patrick. I hope you have a good time with me too, Pat.
I definitely do. That's why I do it at every opportunity. So.
And this is our first collaboration, though. We're going to do it next week as well, and with Mount Etna. So we're covering the Mediterranean. You could probably take a day boat trip from the Pelopponese going west to Sicily. The third person we're waiting for is Sofia Perpera, who is the director of wines from Greece. And she, with no exaggeration, starting in around 2003, almost single-handedly impacted the perception of modern Greek wine in the United States. I met her at the Aspen Food and Wine Festival, where she and her husband, George, I think had brought several cases of Greek samples and made sure that every sommelier, specifically restaurant people, got a chance to taste the wines, and then proceeded to take those of us who were lucky enough to get on her very intimate trips. I was lucky enough to go to northern Greece, and we have Ed Corey on tonight, who you are newly retired from Johnson & Wales, correct? He ran the culinary institution there. No small feat, that. Patrick, will you keep an eye out for Sofia? Because she evidently has the link now, but I still don't see her, and I'm going to keep an eye on her.
That's fine. I'll keep an eye on the guest list and make sure she makes it in.
Patrick, can you tell me, because I don't know, when your first introduction to Greek wine was?
Well, my introduction to Greek wine was actually at that initial Uncork for a Cure event, because we used Cigalas.
The Cigalas, the Santorini. So I get minor credit.
Good. We do. So we used that as one of the pairings, and that was, at that point in time, I was a very new young sommelier who had really had exposure to the kind of establishment classics in Italy, France, and the New World, and Greek wine was kind of this, ethos of words I couldn't read or pronounce or understand. But I was highly interested because I studied ancient Greek and Roman history. And so...
Wait a minute, you studied ancient... You can speak ancient Greek?
No. I can pretend to speak a little bit of Latin. But I could at least write some words down in ancient Greek, but I was more on the history and literature side than in the linguistic side. And so I became interested kind of through that, and then through my studies, studying for the Master Sommelier exam.
I'm interrupting long enough to tell everyone that Patrick passed the third level, the Master Sommelier Advanced exam, on his first try. No small feat, that. I'm wildly proud of him. And in one respect, it's actually tougher than the Masters, because you have to pass all three parts on one try. And you did. And two people from Grand Rapids, you and Eric did it. I was lucky enough to be there to see it. I was thrilled. And we actually got to hug in those days, hopefully.
I know. It feels like a long time ago. It's almost almost exactly a year ago. And it feels like longer than that. I'll say that. But
well, I hope you, well, you know what? I know that I have to tell you all who are on this with us that hanging out with someone who's actively studying for an exam, be it Master of Wine or Master Sommelier, is spectacular because they're little walking encyclopedias, you know? So if I tend to forget something or I'm hanging on to old information, I can just turn to Patrick and he will fill in the blanks.
that's a lot of pressure to put on me.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, that means, you know what? But
I should get used to it.
You should get used to it because you're prepping to do it on a bad day, not hoping for a good day. And you've already done that once.
That's right.
So I know that the schedule for the master's exam is depending on, you know, some, Sofia just responded. Her connection is not the greatest, but she's trying. So Patrick, you and I are going to forge ahead. I'm going to send her a little message saying, we'll start without you, but please keep trying. Okay.
Yeah.
So well, go ahead.
Well, I'll just continue by saying I'm lucky enough to be at a restaurant, kind of getting back to Greek wine. I'm lucky enough to be at a restaurant where we can pour over 100 wines by the glass. And so we have room in our program to feature, I mean, fairly heavily for the scope of Greek wine. I mean, we pour 3 by the glass right now.
That's amazing. Which 3 do you pour?
So we actually pour 2 of the wines. The first 2 wines we're tasting tonight, the Agiorgitiko Malagousia and the Santorini. And then we pour a different Naoussa Xinomavro than the Kyriani, but it's from a producer called Timiopolis. That's very, very good as well. So
I think that's spectacular. So you are doing Greek wine in motion. You know, you're speaking truth to this subject. And I'm happy to say at Plum Market, I know at the West Bloomfield store, we have at least, I think, 6 to 8 wines in the set that range from, I'm pretty sure we have all of these, plus a few more because, you know, I'm Greek, by the way, and I did spend 15 years on the outskirts of Athens, but I have to, you know, the PS to all this is I speak fluent street Greek. So, and I can write it at the level of like maybe a 6 or 8-year-old. So, you know, if we're going to Santorini together, I'm your girl, but I can't really read the newspaper because it's like Low Greek and High Greek. I speak Low Greek, but Greek wine was a complete revelation to me. And when I went on this wine trip with Sofia, I don't even know how many years ago. You may have to type that in for me, Ed. It was probably almost 10 years ago. It was really revelatory. And we just went from the far west to the far east in northern Greece. And, you know, I'm going to tell you right now that a Greek will tell you that Macedonia is the true Macedonia. You know, the country that calls itself Macedonia, which is now I think called the Republic of Macedonia or something like that. It's not where Philip the Great and Alexander came from. But that said, it was really a revelation. We are going to take a quick little tour of Greece using these 4 wines. And then the reason we did 4 is because we just figured there's too much diversity. Hopefully, Sofia is going to join us. But the one thing I wanted to assure you, Patrick.
I'm here, Madeline.
Oh, you're here.
Oh, there she is.
Fantastic. Yay.
I'm so sorry. I had a problem with my modem.
No, welcome. We've been saying wonderful things about you. I'm making you a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so that hopefully the 3 of us are. So everyone say hello to Sofia Perpera, who is joining us from the island of Tinos, correct?
Tinos.
Which
with
is
a terrible wind.
With a terrible link, but we will
wind.
What's up?
Wind, a terrible wind.
Terrible wind, and it is what time there now? Is it 11:15 at night?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sofia. And this is where you joined your family. You're with your your daughter and husband, and your mom lives there. And
for the summer.
We're thrilled to have you. We sort of
thank you.
Just. We're dragging our feet a little bit. We shared the order. If you have all 4 wines, you know, we're gonna do a little bit of introduction with
Okay.
some history and some facts about modern wines, modern Greek wines that Sofia will touch on. But in the meantime, please go ahead and sip. And we're going to start with the Malagousia, which you can call Malagousia, a rose by any other name. Yep, thank you, Patrick. And Sofia, before we hand it over to you, you had asked that we talk a little bit about the state of modern Greek wine in the United States. Patrick was just saying you pour 3 wines by the glass. Do you find accessibility is easy for you, Patrick?
Generally speaking, with I would say yes and no. I would say the wines that we have access to, we always have access to. Someone like Ted Diamantis at Diamond Imports is really another champion of Greek wines, and so
Of course.
that's a beautiful portfolio that we always get to pick from. And that being said, though, I think especially in the regions where quality is very, very high. So Santorini, Naoussa, these wines that Madeline and I are always opining are going to be the next great wines of the world, on par with Sancerre and Barolo and these sorts of things. We only have access to a small number of producers, although they're all very good. And so as a buyer, I would love to see kind of this, because to give you an example, I have access to hundreds of Barolo producers and maybe a dozen producers from Macedonia, and so it's still a very small number. And that's, partially to be expected because it's a very, in the American mind, a new wine region, which is funny because the history is so ancient. But it's, so we do have good access to a few really good ones, but I will always love to see more. So.
Well, you ripped the words out of my mouth, because I think I was just explaining, and then I heard your lovely voice telling me you were on, that I know that in Plum Market, we carry anywhere between 4 to 8 Greek selections, and we try to represent the categories between white and red. There's always at least 2 Xinomavro, just because, I like it a lot. And hopefully at least some of you have some lamb tonight to balance it out. But if nothing else, and also I find that it's not as exotic as it used to be. We sell them routinely. Sommeliers certainly know about them, thanks to you, Sofia. But in a market like ours in Michigan, that is not, let's face it, quite as primary as New York or the West Coast, I would like to just see more Greek wines come into to Michigan through established importers or even new sources. So just, that's a wink and a nod to you.
Yeah, that's actually our challenge. That's what we need to be working on. And there has been a big evolution actually the last few years, but still there's a lot of work to be done. And I know that COVID brought us also back because the exports have suddenly stopped for several months now. And we're hoping that the situation is going to ameliorate soon.
Well, it's going to, sooner or later. We're just going to hold that happy thought, because Greeks always have a glass full, not half full, because we lead with our heart. I think that's fair enough. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Sofia, but I just want to mention to everyone, because I don't think I was hip enough, or we were hip enough to send your bio out, but Sofia has a degree from the University of Bordeaux. She worked harvests not just in Greece, but in France as well. But in 1998, and she's actually been at this spectacular job of promotion and education on Greek wines since 1998, where you were part of the Greek Wine Federation, correct? And you were involved in promotion, legislation, educational programs, activities in an inter-European setting. But in 2003, she created All About Greek Wines, and that touched, sommeliers who were paying any attention whatsoever in the United States. I remember clearly how many seminars were pulled together by, sommeliers that I admired and you. and
Yeah, we've done a lot.
and she is currently the director of is
The
it
Greek Wine
director
Bureau.
of Greek Wine Bureau. So you are you coordinate both education and promotion in North America, correct? So
Yes,
stay
yes.
tuned for the
Actually,
rest.
I was doing this.
Mhm.
Actually, I was doing this until last year.
Mhm.
So now I'm back to Greece, and something new is about to start soon. But I'm not supposed to mention anything yet.
Well,
But
we will
we're
wait for you to
involved
tell us
with
about it. Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Stinigasas, everyone raise a
Stinigasas.
glass.
Yes,
Well, first of all, to all of us in extraordinary times by anybody's measure.
yes,
Isigian, which is the fancy way of saying to your health in Greek, and
yes.
Yasas, which is the cozy way of saying it. But please sip while. Sofia, do you want me to pull up the PowerPoint and I can flip through it, the slides?
Yes, go ahead. That will be good, and I'll just be seeing it here.
So for a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about history, but please go ahead and sip. Is that good with you, Patrick?
That's great.
Yeah, please interrupt me if I get too pushy.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can pull this up. Hold the boat. I think I actually have it. Yay!
Great. That's good. Well, I actually wanted to drop a few words about the history so that you understand why we're at the same time one of the oldest and the newest winemaking countries, because according to all the recent discoveries, we have been producing wine in Greece for more than 5,000 years. In fact, from northern Greece, the first indication for wine producing in the area of Macedonia has been since the 4 millennium before Christ. I cannot tell you, nevertheless, that the Greeks were the first to produce the wines. We know that it was in Georgia. But the Greeks were the first to create a very sophisticated wine culture. Wine, they realized very quickly the nutritional value of wine, and it was a part of their everyday diet. And they even created a god for wine, Dionysus. We all have heard of Dionysus, who was actually half god and half human. And with this, they wanted to show that he was very much closer to the humans. He was also the god of fertility, and they would organize all throughout the year different celebrations according to how the vineyard or the production of wine was going. For example, in spring they had the Dionysia, and a little bit earlier in February they had Anthesteria, the festival of flowers, because many of the Greek wines were muscats, and there were smells of flowers. Anyway, sorry?
He was the god of fertility and wine. Now let's think about that for a second.
Yes.
Can you see that? Can you see the slides? Are they appearing on your screen, Sofia?
Yes, they are appearing.
Great,
actually, cool. The slides I'm showing now is we wanted to show you where Greece is located in Europe. It's a tiny country in the most southern part of Europe. And I don't know if we can move to the next one. This is the map of Greece that has all the different appellations. We have 33 different appellations and 120 wines with the designation of origin, like the Vin de Pays. Protected designation, sorry, with protected designation, I meant.
So that's called PDO or PDI, is that
PDO
correct?
is the appellation of origin, the protected designation of origin, and the PGI is the protected geographical origin. And now if we can move again a little bit further down. Okay, so one other thing that the Greeks were the first to do was that we have created the first appellation rules. Very quickly they realized the importance of the influence of the ecosystem. And first of all, they were distributing their wines with different shapes of amphorae, and they could realize the origin of the wine in relation to the different shape of the amphorae, as now we know the different shape of bottle of Burgundy in relation to Bordeaux. And then we have found different seals with which they were sealing the amphorae, and also documentation that was showing that they were imposing penalties to those that would not follow the rules of the appellation.
This
So
is
we had
amazing. And this was what,
Yeah.
how many thousand years ago? I mean, this is
It's,
the island of Thasos, right?
Yeah, from the island of Thasos is
Thasos,
this
right.
particular stamp. So it's at least 3,000 years, the appellations of origin.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Another amazing thing is that they will use different shapes of cups according to the occasion. The one below, kratir, from these words comes the modern Greek word for wine in Greece, krasi.
Oh.
So in the ancient times, they used to dilute wine, one part of wine with the 3 parts of water, because the wines had higher sugars and higher degrees of alcohol. So they needed to dilute them in order to not to get drunk. And they were drinking basically in moderation.
And also, it wasn't just the rich people, correct? As I understand it, they kind of democratized wine drinking, which was very unlike what was taking place, at least initially in France. Right.
Yes, everybody was drinking wine. It was a part of their everyday drink. Then after when the Romans came, took over the trade, it was only the high-end Romans had access to the Greek muscats, which were supposed to be the most sought after wines of those years. And during the Byzantine years, the Christians did not allow anymore the worship of Dionysus, but still wine played a very important role. It was used in the religion, all the religious festivals and festivities, like they did in the antiquity, but not mentioning Dionysus. Then when the Byzantine when the Byzantine era started becoming weaker and weaker, Byzantium, then we start seeing many vineyards being abandoned and being gathered only around monasteries, which was the trend when the Ottomans also took over, because they were imposing very high taxes to the peasants, and they couldn't keep anymore, they couldn't handle to keep their vineyards. So you could only find vineyards around monasteries, because they had several, they had special privileges, and also on the islands, because the Turks didn't go to several of the islands like Santorini, and it took them many years also to take over Crete.
So there was a big disconnect, wasn't there, between that time and like the 20th century? Unlike, let's say, France and Italy that was developing their wine industry, there was a big gap until after World War II, right?
Yes, Greece didn't go through the Renaissance like all the other European countries did, because during the time that the rest of the Europe was going through Renaissance, Greece was under Turkish occupation. And then when Greece got its independence and the Turks started leaving the country, they were burning big parts of the country. But still, we had lots of vineyards. Then the phylloxera came, and then in the 20th century, we had the 2 world wars and a terrible civil war that finished in the 50s. Why I'm telling you all this is I want you to realize why at the same time we're one of the oldest and one of the newest countries, because it's only my generation that hasn't seen a war. So we had to really start from the beginning. In the 60s, the country, and around the 1960s, the country was left totally devastated, very poor, extremely poor. And marketing for us, obviously, it's a very new word. And we had to start completely from the beginning. So we had to reinvent ourselves, and everything started over again when Greece entered the European Union in the 80s. our appellations of origin started being established at the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. The sector went through the Renaissance, the first Renaissance in the 80s, when Greece entered the European Union, and we started seeing lots of investment in modern.
Do you know what, Sofia? It just occurred to me, I think when I was at a then famous restaurant in Detroit called the London Chop House, I actually put Michigan wine on the list before I put Greek wine. So this was like in the 80s. I mean, it just didn't exist in the United States other than the most commercial examples that we had a thriving Greek community in Metro Detroit, but we certainly didn't have any wine worth paying attention to.
But you know, the interesting thing is that many of the people that immigrated from Greece in the 50s and the 60s, when the country was very poor, at that time, the images that they had of Greece are so different than what Greece is now. And the wines that they were drinking, it was before the Renaissance. The Renaissance started after that. So they were not really aware. They were aware of Retsina, which at that point, in many cases, was just a bad white wine that the winemaker didn't know what to do with it. And they thought that by adding Retsina, it would make it bearable. But now you can see some delightful, light and fresh, earthy Retsinas that have nothing to do with the old style.
You know what, it's funny because for me, Retsina was always, you know, after being in the Mediterranean all day and coming out and you're tired and hungry and you're sitting there and eating, you know, delicious, simple Greek food with olive oil, and you have a couple of small glasses of Retsina topped out of a barrel. So I always think that modern Retsina is a neat phenomena, but a big disconnect for me.
Yes. Yeah. But if the Italians had Retsina, it would have been the biggest hit. We just are not half as good. I mean, what am I saying? Much less than half as good in marketing. So,
well, they managed to do a pretty good job with Chianti in lamp bottles until they figured out that perhaps they could even do a better job with better clones. But at least we've left that perception of Greece behind. Is this the right, am I on the right slide for you, or should I keep going?
I'm going back and forth.
Oh, but, that's cool. So it doesn't matter.
This has to do about yes, doesn't matter. This is about the modern stage of Greek wine, where I told you we have 33 appellations of origin, PDOs, and 120 PGIs. We have the most important thing about Greek wine is that it has something to offer to the saturated international wine market, because for us to bring in the market another Cabernet, another Chardonnay, we do produce, and some very nice examples, but the world doesn't need another Cabernet from Greece. We have about 300 or more indigenous grapes.
That's unbelievable, because Greece, you know, Italy brags about that, and you're right. Yes. We're not as good as Italy about bragging about it.
Yes. So this is what we have, and also the fact that for us, the Greeks, wine was always a part of our meal. The wines are made to complement the meal, not to overpower it. So you're not going to see many Greek wines over 13 degrees of alcohol, and most of them are going to have great acidity. They're going to be crisp. They were made to go with food. So they're food friendly. They have something to offer because they're made by indigenous grapes, and because they're still relatively unknown, they still offer a great ratio of price to quality.
But you know, you said something really important. People think of Greece, they think of Greece in the summertime being hot in July and August, but this is a country, you saw the map, you want to talk about a maritime influence. You have like breezes everywhere. You have significant altitude, right? Too. And it's extremely varied in terms of the topography. I find it so fascinating, don't you, Patrick?
Yeah, well, that's, you know, going to kind of adding new things in a saturated market is really appealing to a sommelier, because you have not only new and interesting things to taste and learn about and expose people to, but because maybe because Greeks aren't as good at marketing, the wines way over deliver for the money that anyone is paying for them. And so but you also get this huge diversity of styles. You know, we were mentioning like what, you know, categories I guess these wines fit into, and Madeline said for Santorini, you know, move out of the way Sancerre, and we're talking about Xinomavro in the sense of Barolo and Barbaresco, and it's like those are two like completely different categories of wine that grow on different soils and different climates, and they're within this country and are kind of up and coming. And so you have, even within specific regions, which we'll get into a little bit more with Macedonia and Naoussa, you have completely different styles of wine and varying quality levels, varying stylistic choices winemakers have to make. So it's extremely interesting because it's a small area that has a lot of diversity from a soil and climate perspective that is really fun. So
look at this picture. This is spectacular. This is Metsovo in the northwest. Is that right, Sofia?
Yes.
Wow.
And we are the third most mountainous European country, but yet still, like Madeline said, everybody thinks that Greece only as a place with blue waters and small islands, which is just a part of Greece. There's a lot of variation.
Oh, well, if it's okay with you, why don't we go ahead and talk about the
the wines.
And would you pronounce this for us slowly?
Yes.
So everyone can hear you.
Malagousia.
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 Malagousia. And the winemaker's name and the winery is?
Gerovasiliou. Gerovasiliou.
Which means, right, the old man William, or old William, or right?
Basil. Basil.
Yeah. Well,
yes. He's one of the really top winemakers. He has, it's an amazing estate, the estate Gerovasiliou, half an hour outside of Thessaloniki in Epanomi.
Oh, here we go. Great map. Yeah.
Yes, more than 50 hectares. Yes, there. And he's considered by many. He has helped like no other maybe to help save Malagousia, because he found he used to work at Porto Caras with Emile Peynaud. Emile Peynaud was his teacher, and Emile Peynaud helped Porto Caras cultivate their vineyards, and he brought with him his student who was Vangelis Gerovasiliou. And Vangelis, and they had a small experimental vineyard, and Vangelis saw there the plantings of Malagousia that were brought there by the Wine Institute, and he realized the potential, and he started cultivating it in his own estate as well.
But
So
unbelievable, but I mean, he actually single-handedly, and you know, Sofia mentioned Emile Peynaud. Just to remind everybody, he's sort of the granddaddy of
modern enology.
Modern enology, you know, known for being French, but he influenced everyone. So he was Vasily was working here, right? And
Vangelis,
and then,
Vangelis,
and then he created his estate there, and it's almost totally surrounded by the sea, isn't it? So it's
very close to the water. Yes. But I have to mention here, there's also one other woman that has helped tremendously in the Malagousia becoming well known. It's Roxani Matza. So she has been giving out cuttings of Malagousia. So Vangelis was the first to recognize the potential, and then Roxani has been also the one spreading around the plantings of Malagousia. And now Malagousia actually, it's the fastest growing grape in Greece because it's very pleasant, very aromatic. It has a nice body. It's a grape that everybody likes to experiment with.
Patrick, can you describe what you said about the nose? Because you said it so beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's so aromatic and floral that it's this kind of, you know, orange blossom, orange creamsicle almost, you know, and we were talking, you know, it reminds me of Viognier with this,
Yes,
like
exactly.
almost like pine tree, pine resin kind of thing. Not like Retsina, but in this like beautiful floral note. But then it kind of surprises you because Viognier has a lot of this very oily texture and is not as, you know, not a lot of acidity. And this has, you know, kind of a good backbone of acidity that makes the wine a little bit more refreshing and less of an intense experience. And so it's a very, it balances itself out very nicely, which I could see, you know, talking about ripeness levels. I think it takes a talented winemaker to manage those, because it could get, this aromatic profile can get really intense if you let the ripeness get out of hand. So it's something you'd really have to manage, I think.
Boy, you said that very poetically. I can't compete, but I will tell you, you know, exactly what you said. It smells like flowers, almost an illusion of sweetness, but then the palate has this wonderful cleansing acidity. So the effect is kind of exotic, but in a comforting way. You know, it's not exotic weird. Frankly, I don't think it needs food, but I think it will. I would take this to an Indian restaurant, I was telling Patrick, because of that wonderful sort of combination of perfume and flowers and mangoes and ripe citrus, and then it's cleansing. Do you guys want to weigh in, everyone who's tasting it? Does anyone want to unmute and make a comment about how it tastes, if you like it? The Vasiliu Malagousia. Did I do okay?
And how many of you have tasted a Malagousia before? Because this is, you know, because this is one of the wines we pour by the glass, and for most of our guests, this is their first and only exposure to this grape variety, which is, you know, it's not widely known. And so I'd be curious to see if anyone has a lot of experience.
Patrick, can they unmute themselves, or do you have to unmute? Okay.
Yep.
Anybody want to weigh in? You're all being very restrained and elegant. Somebody should.
Feel free to throw in the chat as well.
Yeah.
At any point, really, you know, you can put questions in the chat if you don't want to forget them, and we'll always come back to them.
And by the way, I have to say that Joanna, who's our buyer at Chicago Plum, reminded me that she has 15 Greek wines in Old Town. So go hip Chicago.
Great. Well, Ted is doing such a great job in Chicago.
Madeline.
Yes. Oh, hello, Maria and Evgenia. Yes.
We need to have more Greek wines in Michigan.
Well, you know who to talk to, and I think we're going to work on it.
2 glasses.
Oh, yeah, we already. It's so good.
So chin chin. You know, what are you munching on? You must have something delicious.
Yeah, we have just cheese and crackers. But I have to tell you a funny story. I brought Mark to Vasiliu Winery the first year we got married, and we went back to Greece, because it's in my hometown of Thessaloniki, just outside.
So you took him there.
My dad took him there because my dad knew he was in Tijuana, and that was in our neighborhood. So he took him there and met Vangelis Vasiliu. Yes. So he's very close to our heart.
Sophia, please say hello to everyone. Say hello to Evgenia and Maria. Jonah, lightly connected to me in that Mark Jonah, their husband and father respectively, is the gentleman I work for at Plum Market. So, and Evgenia and I will, in a very positive way, occasionally gossip in Greek, because she's the only one I'm around who I can speak.
We chit-chat in Greek. Yeah, it's fun.
We chit-chat. Thank you for saying hello.
In the chat, Sarah was asking for some more food pairing suggestions. I mean, I would go you can go pretty classic Greek cuisine. I think this is actually a good wine. That florality, I think, would go nicely with some more delicate herbs like parsley or something like that, which is sometimes difficult to pair wine with. Or even, honestly, I think this would be really good with just some really good olives. You know, that's really straightforward, but it's, I think you're pretty safe staying Mediterranean with really all of these wines. But some of those flavors are really, really intense, and you're heavy on garlic or different seasonings and spices, and some of these this wine would be a fun pairing to kind of like go almost intensity against intensity. And
I think it can handle anything. I'm curious because I know they have a very sophisticated kitchen at the winery, Sofia. What do they serve with this? Do you know what?
Well,
they like?
Actually, now since you went there, they have created this amazing restaurant. It wasn't there when you visited it, so I don't know. I think it's more focused on seafood, but they're creating several amazing dishes.
Well, another reason to visit again. Yay!
Yes, of course.
Well, Phil said grape leaves. That would be a great pairing.
So we're going to the place everyone has heard of and many people have visited, Sofia, and your pictures of Santorini are spectacular.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you've got the Assyrtiko, everyone, we kind of did this counterintuitively. You might think intellectually you would serve the more crisp wine first. Thank you for showing it, Patrick. But actually, I think the Malagousia, because it's easy without food, was a terrific welcoming wine, whereas the Assyrtiko is a little, its acidity can be a little bit of a shock, right?
Yeah. And it's more full body Santo, so it's good. Wait a second.
So what do we need to know about this gorgeous island?
So this is really one of the places where you just feel.
Oh, did Sofia?
Oh, I think we might be frozen.
Okay, I bet she'll come back, but I'm going to go back to the picture while we wait for Sofia. But these are the vines that are trained into baskets to protect the clusters that are hanging right inside of them from the Meltemi, this fierce wind that Sofia is referring to, because Tinos is not far from Santorini, that comes up from Crete. And this is an utterly unique vine training system. Sofia, hopefully, go ahead.
It is pretty wild. I will also say this is a really unique area. I'm going to bring in my Greek history education here from a mythological perspective.
Good.
The Cyclades, or the Cycladic Islands that this is a part of, are widely considered the kind of birthplace of Apollo, and they're one of the most untouched areas of Greece from a ruins perspective. So there are a couple of islands down there that have these just absolutely beautiful untouched ancient ruins, and you see even in Santorini, which is a little bit more of a popular vacation destination these days, you still see this beautiful blue and white stucco architecture that is supreme this area, and it's just really beautiful. So kind of an interesting mythological place, and the wines, I think, kind of reflect that. I get a little bit you could call it superstitious with great places produce great wines, but I think that the ancients, even if they attributed it to their mythology, had a finger on the pulse that this is a very special area of the world.
Well, I think the birthplaces of Apollo is revelatory. Thank you for that, because I didn't know that. And this is a killer view, because this is a crescent, and this was the tip of a volcano that blew up. Oh, see, now Sofia's not with us, but it's at least 2,500 years ago, 2,500 years ago. And it was, they claim that the tsunami was arguably the strongest that was ever documented, and is responsible, hypothesized, for destroying the Minoan civilization to the south of Santorini. If we go up to the map, because Crete's down here. And so this is the top of the volcano. And so this is as volcanic soil as you can get. And I have to tell you, The first time I ever drank wine to the point where I felt it was on the island of Santorini. And in those days, this is a little mini cute story. It was so safe that I went with two girlfriends. We were probably 16, 17 years old, and we took a day trip to Santorini. And when we got off there, Greece was and is very much a matriarchal society, and that children belong to the country. So you would get off the boat, go to the nearest kiosk, and they would tell you what houses were taking in boarders. And it's as if the entire island was taking care of these young American girls. Isn't that spectacular? However, I did drink a little wine and giggled quite a bit, but it was utterly innocent. And I remember swimming at midnight. And this was before they made that horrible movie, Summer Lovers, and made Santorini famous. I think that was Daryl Hannah's first movie. So there was one bus and one taxi on the island. Times have changed. Wow, look at this.
Look at that.
Do we still don't have Sofia? I don't hear her.
I don't see her.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah, I don't see her.
No. Come on, Sofia, keep trying. I'll send her a little email. Patrick, you want to talk about, this is like, they have no water on this island, correct? They have, so how do the vines get nurtured?
It's pretty wild. They, they have that vine training method you were talking about, which allows the grapes to, because it's very dry, arid, and windy. And so it allows the grapes to kind of survive amongst these winds. If they had trellised them up like you see in California or in places in France, the grapes would be destroyed, the vines would be blown away. And so they have this really unique basket training method, which you actually see represented on the front of the Santo bottle. So there we go.
And it's called a Stefani, which actually means a crown in Greek. Like when in a Greek wedding, you've seen like something similar to that, that's a woven crown that they use on the heads of the bridegroom and the bride. And
so they have a really, I think this is largely due to the maritime influence of the place, but they have a fog that settles over and almost serves as a natural irrigating system for these grapevines. And part of the reason that they make these crowns is it's designed to trap as much of that water as possible and allocate it to specific grapevines, which is pretty insane from I don't know if that was discovered through like kind of pure trial and error or heuristic, or if there's somebody that's attributed to, but I think it's really brilliant how the wine, how the viticulture has developed there.
Necessity is the mother, right?
Seriously.
And this is a grape variety that, has staggering levels of acidity, considering it's actually growing in a very warm growing region. So people who like Chablis, people who like the saltiness. Oh, is that Sofia? Are you back?
Yeah, I came. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No. We were doing a credible job with Santorini, not as good as you.
I'm sure you did great.
No, we're just starting to talk about the Assyrtiko because I'm tasting it, and the minerality is just spectacular on it. And so is the acidity. And it tastes salty, Sofia.
Yes, it does. Very salty, very salty.
Well, and these wines, I think they're partially they're on the radar because of their very high quality and their long ageability. You taste these wines in their youth, and there's a lot of intensity in the acidity and the minerality that it reminds me. This is funny because it feels like just paying lip service a little bit. It reminds me of the first time I ever tasted Costerie Bourgogne Blanc. The Bourgogne Blanc, which is very, in its youth, like extremely intense, but there's not a lot of oak, and so you get a lot of that like pure acidity and minerality coming through. And so when I taste really good Assyrtiko, that's what it reminds me of. And so I think I haven't been lucky enough to taste a lot of these wines with a lot of age on them, but I think they could age for a really long time.
Oh my God. So do they age? They must age spectacularly well, Sofia.
Yes. Yes, spectacularly well, and they get these petrol notes. They remind you of some old Rieslings. They're really, really great wines. Yeah.
But what a thing to have, especially with Greek cuisine. When I think of Greek cuisine, when I think of, you know, coming home from ACS, from the American International School every day, and my lunch would be waiting on the stove, right? My parents would be taking a nap, and whatever they left for me that was utterly homemade always had the very best olive oil on it.
Yeah.
And when I think of Greek cuisine, I really don't think of cheese. Cheese, when I was growing up, was more of a condiment. But I do think of great olive oil and wonderful pure flavors. And I think this wine, note to self, if this acidity is too high for you, the minute it hits olive oil, it's going to soften. And also the minute it hits lemon, which we like to put lemon over everything, right?
Yeah, but especially with olive oil, like you say, it cuts through any oily dish, if you have something fried, if you have something that really needs good acidity, it's a chef's dream.
Talking about, you know, like oyster wines, you know, with Chablis and Muscadet, like, I mean, any shellfish oysters, like, this is an absolute knockout, you know.
Any comments from the Academy out there? Are you sipping on the Assyrtiko? I just adore this wine. Did I hear someone? Bill.
Patrick, I as soon as you were talking about oysters, I'm like a great, you know, oyster on the half shell would be just perfect with this wine.
It's amazing, you know, Assyrtiko and oysters.
Move over Muscadet and Chablis.
That's right.
Salinity, yes,
Madeline?
Yes.
Did you talk about the age of these vines at all? I'm not sure.
No, we didn't. And if you can talk, because well, first of all, they're ungrafted, correct? And by the way, Mike, hold the thought. We're going to have Mike Pfeiffer, who's from one of our Ann Arbor stores, pipe up with a comment momentarily. But please talk about the age of the vine, Sofia.
Yeah, it's, I think Santorini is like a museum, you know, in terms of the vineyard. It has been in complete, in continuous cultivation for almost 3,000 years. But each vine also can be like from 100 to 300 years, each vine, because they're cutting every 50 to 60, around 50 to 60 years, the coulura. I'm sure you showed some of those photos from the soil, but the root system remains there, and they're doing these 3 or 4 times. So the average year of one vine can be over 300 years.
I mean, it's staggering. Does everyone get that? Because we're talking about the root system doesn't change. So it can be hundreds of years old. Mike, did you want to say something? You go ahead.
Yeah, you know, we always talk about terroir and how it reflects the wine reflects where it comes from. I've always found this one to really reflect the terroir of the area of Santorini with the to me a lot of minerality, the salinity, all of it.
Smokiness.
I've never visited, but I can imagine just from the glass what this area is like, just from the nose and from the palate. So I just wanted to chime in with that.
And you know, speaking of food, evidently they make unbelievably good tomatoes there, and fava beans, right? And those are protected by an appellation system as well. So fava beans with olive oil, excellent. We should. I'm going to keep us moving along, because otherwise I don't want to.
Can I just add one little thing? Because I saw my dear friend Ed Corey there, who is an expert on dessert wines, and one of the most amazing dessert wines of Greece come from Santorini, the Vinsantos, and I'm sure Ed could have something amazing as always to say. I don't know if we can give him the...
Yeah, thanks. Great to see you, Sofia.
So good to see you, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, the ageability, and, you know, I've been fortunate to taste some wines at Paris Sagalis's winery that go back, they went back more than a dozen years, oak influence and non-oak influence, but the dessert wines of Vinsantos are really incredible wines because, again, even though they have some of the highest amounts of sugar, residual sugar, the acid balances it out so that you don't feel like you're tasting treacle. And the evolution of the aromatics with age become more and more complex. So yeah, one of the true extraordinary wines, and of course Vinsanto, you know, the Italians had to recant in a sense, and the EU allowed for Vinsanto to be used on the label, even though the Italians tried to stop them. And you know, they demonstrated that they preceded either Vino Santo from Veneto or the Tuscan Vinsanto by hundreds of years. So yeah, one of the great what I call sweet wines of the world.
So Ed, now that you're not at Johnson and Wales, please tell me that you're writing a book that I can happily buy and recommend to everyone pretty soon. Yes?
I don't know about how pretty soon, but the primary focus is on the great sweet wines, which have maybe more history than any other category of wines.
So everyone who's on, remember Edward Corey. And thank you for bringing Ed in. Sophia, can we go to the Peloponnese now? Go ahead.
One quick thing before we move on, I do just want to mention a couple notes about the specific producer as well. Santo, it's a big co-op that has been around, I believe, since the middle of the 40s. And so they've been making wine there long before Santorini was kind of in the world consciousness as far as wine goes, you know, a few decades before. And so I think they have something like 1,000 or 1,200 growers. And so it's a good kind of coalition of producers that's putting together some really good wine. And I think that allows them to keep the price down, which we're really lucky for because we fly through this by the glass. So.
Yeah, and you know, the definitive guy, Paris Sigalas's Assyrtiko, is correctly and understandably significantly pricier than this. And the whole co-op phenomena is just a wonderful European phenomena where farmers essentially, you know, who also grow other things are able to make a living off their grapes. And this is a fine co-op indeed. We are now going to the Peloponnese, so we're not going to make it to our reds. Go ahead, Sophia. We've got, you have to teach us to say not St. George, Agiorgitiko.
Agiorgitiko. Well, that's more difficult. If you can say this, you can say anything. Agiorgitiko. Yes. Well, we have two major reds that we're going to try both of them. In the south, in the Peloponnese, we have the Agiorgitiko, which is more fruity, more velvety. It has, you can make some very nice, refreshing red wines, but also some amazing Vin de Garde. And the area where Agiorgitiko is cultivated mainly is Nemea. And we distinguish 3 different zones of Nemea in relation to the different altitudes. So we have the Valley of Nemea from between 250 and 450 meters, where most of the dessert wines and the light reds are being produced. Then we have the middle area, which is between 250 and 450 meters of altitude. And it's most of the red wines of age that are produced. And then we have the higher altitude, where some delicious rosé with very nice aromas are being produced and crisp acidity, and some fresh reds. Now, I think that Agiorgitiko could be one, we could, apart from the aged wines, that it's more difficult for us to compete because all the countries are competing in that category. Not many have been competing in the fresh category of reds, and I think that we have a huge potential with our reds there, and because the Agiorgitiko has velvet tannins. It's also, they're also delightful with seafood. So it's something that we could really focus on seafood and Agiorgitiko, because many people like
I think that's
wine.
brilliant, Sofia.
Yes.
You know, because it is, the tannins are really singular, and you're saying that because the wine always reminds me of right bank Bordeaux that's Merlot dominated, only you know, with a little bit of a different flavor. But I think that would be a brilliant way to get Agiorgitiko on American tables, and those expressions would be more moderately priced, wouldn't they be?
Yes, of course.
Fresher expressions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But having said that, also there are some really delightful, full-bodied, dark reds produced, like in Kutsi, in Gimno, in some of the villages.
Now, can they, for it to be Nemea, does it have to be 100% Agiorgitiko? Because it does blend well with Cabernet, but then they have to call it something, they have to call it by a proprietary name, right?
No, but they can use the name of the prefecture, or they can call it PGI Pelopponese, or PGI Corinth, or PGI, you know, they can use a larger name than the zone, than the actual zone.
Okay,
or
so
Triphylia.
Okay, so if someone sees a slightly pricier Nemea, then, you know, it may flip the bottle around and they can tell you if it's a blend, and don't be surprised if it's got Cabernet in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, but it won't be named Nemea. It's not going to have the term
It'll
Nemea.
say...
Nemea is only Agiorgitiko.
It's only
Agiorgitiko, yeah. And it has to be from specific areas. Yeah.
See,
but it does, but Agiorgitiko does blend well with Cabernet and Syrah. Yeah.
No, that's a very interesting thing, because I think Syrah, and I'm curious about your opinion, both Patrick and Sofia, I think Syrah is the great noble world traveler, because think about it. It's planted with success in southeastern Portugal, which is torrid hot. It's planted on the coast of Tuscany and blended with super Tuscans. And here we are being planted not just in the Peloponnese, but in northern Greece as well, with great success.
And Crete, some amazing examples of Syrah in Crete. I think it's the best international grape, the expression of the best expression of international grape, Syrah.
Well, and Syrah is so fun because you get, I think people, especially sommeliers, get too hung up on the like great Northern Rhone versions of it, which are great, but they're also extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And there are some just amazing versions, especially in like Madeline mentioned, slightly cooler climates that kind of express the grape a little bit differently. And so I'm a big fan of Syrah blended in general. You know, it's a friendly blending partner that can bring a lot to other
and a noble one. And I mean, and it's proven that actually in the Southern Rhone, where more and more people are including it in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Sorry to digress, but I think, you know, Agiorgitiko, but if you decide you're not going to do it and you're going to call it St. George, we will not blame you, because Agiorgitiko means St. George. But I think what I love about it is it's accessible. It is a flavor that is comforting to the American palate. It is a little Bordelaise. I don't know if you agree with me or not, in a good way. You know, there's nothing odd about it. It's smooth, it's easy to enjoy, and it ranges from light to quite concentrated, depending on who makes it. This guy Skouras is a big deal in the Peloponnesos, right?
Of course, yes. And he's also the president of the Greek Wine Federation, which is the federation of the private wineries in Greece.
Has he been that for a while?
He's been about 3.5 years now. Yes.
Okay, now we're going to my favorite. Yay, drum roll. We're going to talk about Xinomavro. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, my bad manners. Does anyone, you've been hearing us talk about the Agiorgitiko. Does anyone want to jump in on your impressions of the wine? Is it going nicely with whatever you're eating? I see the Kesslings might be inclined to say something. Are you looking to unmute yourself? We'd love to hear another voice. Phil is saying that you love it. Yay. I find it very easy drinking, and also, not to make this about money, but this wine is utterly accessible in that, what did you have it at, Patrick? We have it at just under, in the high teens.
Yeah, I think it was $16.
Right.
Yeah. Yep, I think it was $16.
The bargain.
So, and this is a wine, you know, I think one of the, from a food pairing perspective, it's also so versatile because it has what I kind of consider either the like affordable Bordeaux or Chianti effect, where it can go with like basically any pizza, pasta, you know, sandwich, there's so many things this wine goes with. Seafood, it's a good wine to just kind of, you know, have. A lot of guests will like it. It's
you know what just occurred to me, and it's thanks to your description. This wine has almost an equal tension between soft tannin and acidity. Think about it, Sofia. Sangiovese does that too. They're one of the only red grapes that you get that perfect tension between lots of smooth tannins and acidity. So it makes it's mouthwatering, actually.
Well, and so
and spiciness too, spiciness.
So your Right Bank Bordeaux description, I would kind of counter, I would say, like modern Chianti Classico, where they blend a fair amount of Merlot or Cabernet in. And that's kind of where I'm taken with this wine.
I agree with you, and I will pivot to your way of looking at it. Okay, Xinomavro, yay, Kiriani, here we are. Oh, I could move here, Sofia.
Yeah, many people would.
Where are we?
Now we're going to northern Greece, and while we were talking about Agiorgitiko, which is a crowd pleaser, we're going to Xinomavro, which you know, sometimes we're calling it the diva of the Greek reds. It's much more difficult to get it right. It has also all these tannins, like the name actually means acid black. You know, it has lots of tannins. Even the pits have more tannins, but also the juice of the
so the pips have more tannin.
Yes.
The grape seeds have more tannin. This is where we are in northwestern Greece. There's Naoussa, and this is what I'm calling Macedonia, right? The true Macedonia, right?
The original.
The original.
So anyway, Xinomavro participates in 4 appellations in northern Greece. In Naoussa, where it's 100%, and Amindeo also in Macedonia, 100%, but different styles. We can talk more about it. And then in Rapsani, where it is blended with Krasato and Stavroto, and in Houmenissa, where it is blended with Negoska. The one that we're going to try now, it's from Naoussa, the Kyriani. Actually, Kyriani has vineyards in Amindeo and in Naoussa, but the one that we are going to try from, the Ramnista, is from Naoussa.
And I have to tell everyone that is Mount Olympus, correct? On the slopes of Mount Olympus, because people like to hear that.
Yes,
Rapsani, yes.
Slopes of Mount Olympus, yes, Rapsani, yeah. So these are the different, we're seeing now the different crews of Naoussa, different villages. And the mountain where the vineyards are is Vernion. It's semi-continental, and it's you get some frosts, and you get different kinds of kinds of soils, and here we see also different winemaking styles. It's very evident. We can find the more traditional style of Xinomavros. First of all, I forgot to mention the traditional style of Xinomavros. You smell some dried olives, some olives and some dried tomatoes, and it's more rustic. While the other side is some more modern, where the tannins are softer and they're more fruity, they're more red fruit. And then there's the one between, the styles that are between those two.
The aroma on this wine, I have to tell you, from the moment I pulled my cork out, was spectacular. I mean, and I would say move over Nebbiolo. It had this wall of beautiful red fruit, fresh and dried and floral and earthy, and just, you know, I hope everyone out there is playing with the fragrance of it.
It's intoxicating.
It's intoxicating.
It's potpourri. It's dried. It has that, you know, dried orange peel as well that you get with Nebbiolo, and then it's. I mean, it's a wine you could just smell and smell and smell before you ever.
Very spicy. Has also these spices like you know, Mediterranean kitchen, and.
Now they have, you know, it's so varied up here that they actually, the vineyards make a difference. So they're, you know, they pay a lot of attention to the little, the mini climates and the different soil types, right?
Yeah, they're actually always experimenting with different soils, with different ways they're cultivating the vineyards, with different clones. They have discovered 4 or 5 different clones, and one of them is the Giannakohori clone. But in the Giannakohori estate, they're experimenting with different clones. They have Stelios Boutaris and Haroulas Pintheropoulou, who is an agronomist, one of the top in Greece. Stelios has hired her, and she deals with the vineyard. She takes care of the vineyards.
She's making I mean, together obviously, but she's leading very important experiments on clonal selection of Xinomavro. And Sofia mentioned Giannakohori. That is like Yani. Can you explain the whole key to Yani and Giannakohori so people understand?
No, Giannakohori is actually a village, but Kyriani, which means Master John, is Yannis Boutaris and his brother Konstantinos Boutaris. They used to own the big Boutari company, but they split in the 90s, and Yannis left the big company. He kept just some vineyards in Naoussa, where at Giannakohori, where he has created the Kyriani estate. But he couldn't use his name Boutari anymore, just the same situation with the Mondavis. But because he was very popular and everybody was calling him Kyriani, like Master John. So anyway, he named the estate Kyriani estate.
I wish, I don't know if we have a picture of them or not. I don't think we do, but I remember I was lucky enough to go there and meet Stelio Boutari, who's like a movie star. He's so handsome, you know, and when you see him standing next to his father, they just make a spectacular pair. It's really, you know, I'd encourage everyone to experiment with all of their wines. I mean, including they make a dry sparkling rosé. And
they make many different styles. They make and also many different styles in relation to their different estates. The one in Amindo, the ones that are a little bit more aromatic, there, lighter, and the ones in from Naoussa that they're a bit more full body, more structured, and recent. And also they own a part of Sigalas estate, and now they have the management also of Sigalas.
Seriously, I did not know that. So have they planted, one thing I really wanted to ask you, Assyrtiko, which is such a noble grape, I know it's been planted on the mainland. I keep waiting for somebody to admit planting it, you know, outside of Greece. All over Greece. But you have to admit, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sofia, unless this is my prejudice, but it never has quite the penetrating minerality that Santorini has. It's a little bit softer and rounder on the mainland. Is that correct?
Yes, it's different, but some very interesting examples nevertheless. And it's very different also to where it is where it is planted. Like it's very different in northern Greece from the Peloponnese and from some of the islands where it is planted, and also from Crete. Assyrtiko is planted in Crete, and some amazing examples are produced there as well.
Oh, I haven't had any from Crete. I haven't played with that. Oh, but you know, isn't our first friend who makes the Malagousia, he makes an Assyrtiko blended with Malagousia, doesn't he?
Oh yes, he was the first one, and it's a perfect blend because Malagousia gives the aroma, and it's more, it doesn't have so much acidity, and then Assyrtiko comes there with it, with the body and the structure, so it's a marriage made in heaven. If
I
you
haven't
can
had
say
it.
this
Have
kind
you
of
had
marriage.
it, Patrick? Have you seen it? Is it coming
No,
into
no, I
Michigan?
have not. I'll have to bug Antoine about it and see, because that's who this Malagousia comes from. So
Sorry,
But there's no left, no more left for the US because it's being consumed here and in other markets, so there's no more.
Sophia, you have to do something about that because the U.S. has done a very good job with these four wines, but you know, particularly the Vasiliou Malagousia is really celebrated here, and we need to get more of the white blend with Assyrtiko. But I am very curious to hear what everyone has to say about the Ramista. Is that the name of, is that a made-up name, Sophia, or is it a vineyard designation?
Yes, a vineyard. It comes from a vineyard also, yeah, Ramista.
I know that the tannin is a little bit shocking when you get it on the palate, but hopefully if you've read the chat room, I'm strongly suggesting baby lamb chops with this.
Oh, yes.
Because the minute it hits that protein and fat, you know what happens? All of the flavors surge because it erases the tannin. It literally neutralizes it. And then the wine tastes the way it smells. Anybody want to weigh in, especially if you're munching something that is doing a good job of showing off the wine? All of you are so well-mannered.
I think this would be so good with, this is kind of a funny one because I know a lot of the versions are eggplant based, but moussaka would be so good with this. Like like ground lamb or ground beef, that would be really delicious.
Yeah.
What is a vegetarian does? Cheeses.
Aged cheeses, that would be great. It would go great.
You know, we're all stuck on feta and halloumi. What are some other cheeses we should look for from Greece?
Halloumi.
Sophia.
Oh my God, so many, but I don't know how many you can find in the US, but we have some amazing gravieres.
That's Gruyere. So when you hear someone say graviera, that's Gruyere, correct?
Yes, aged or fresh. And by the way, when you talked about cheese, you know that we are the #1 country in the world with per capita consumption of cheese.
I didn't know that. That's so funny.
Because especially with feta, we eat feta before and after meal and between and for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, it's crazy.
But you know, I remember growing up I grew up in Pelopponese on the outskirts of Athens. We always put cheese on the table. It wasn't always cooked in the food, but we would take a nice big chunk of 1 or 2 cheeses and put it on our plate as kind of as a condiment. I heard Robin and Norm, you were saying something about halloumi. Were you weighing in?
Oh, I just wanted to say I like this wine. It's a single vineyard, apparently.
And we're having rack of lamb tonight, so it's perfect.
Bravo.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Hope you're inviting 44 other people over.
If you can get here, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'll be there in 2.5 hours. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you need to practice this process of moving without, molecule by molecule, and reassembling yourself wherever you want to go.
I'll work on it. No promises, but
I've got several people working on it.
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, I find, frankly, these tastings so intimate, so fulfilling. I hope you guys do too. And Patrick, playing with you, I'm not going to call it work because that would just be absurd, is a joy. And Sophia, it is now what? Almost half an hour after midnight on the island of Tinos, which is starting to produce very good wine and coming to international attention. Yes.
Small production, very small, but very interesting and an amazing vineyard.
Sofia, I
very
assume
good.
it was an Italian that hit your arm.
Madeline?
Sorry?
Was it an
Repeat?
Italian that hit your hand?
They hit my hand. No, not really. Not really. It's a long story.
Are you healing well?
Yes.
I heard my name before we say goodbye. Someone was going to pipe up. Yes.
Hello, Madeline.
Yeah.
Hello from Fritz and Kareem.
Hello, Fritz and Kareem.
And Terry.
Hi, Kareem.
I wanted to thank you for an absolutely delightful evening, and a heartfelt hello to Sofia. You know, Sofia, one of the most wonderful experiences that we had in Greece was our breakfast with you at the Grand Britannia.
Oh.
And we wanted to make sure that you knew we were thinking of you and sent our love. So
Thank
send
you
our
so
love.
much.
So
It's very moving.
hello to you and best greetings, and thank you, Madeline.
Oh no, and
Thank you.
you know, Patrick, Sophia, and most of all of you, you know, over 40 of you came on tonight, and I hope you join us next week. Patrick, you want to tell them what's happening next Friday at 4 p.m. We are not pulling Sophia into this, though you're welcome to join us. Where are we going, Patrick?
Small correction, it's next Saturday.
Next Saturday. Oh, thank you. Not Friday,
So
Saturday.
Saturday,
Yes.
August 1st. And it's funny because we had talked about doing a tasting where we did, you know, some great wines of Greece, some great wines of Sicily, and they eventually separated into their own 2 separate tastings. And so next week we're doing wines of Tenuta della Terranera, which is one of the most prestigious estates, specifically in Mount Etna, making beautiful wines of Caricante and Lacey, and several other, you know, native Sicilian varieties from those beautiful soils. And we're going to be hopefully joined by Marco de Grazia's assistant Christian, and potentially Jan de Grazia. We'll see if that happens or not. But the really cool thing is we're tasting some wines. We're tasting the Etna Bianco, Etna Rosado, and the Etna Rosa Fiuto di Mezzo, which is a beautiful single cru wine on Mount Etna. And there are only, as far as I know, only 60 bottles in the state, and all 60 of them have gone to either Plum Market or Reserve Wine and Food. And so if you want to taste this vintage of this wine, this tasting is going to be your only opportunity to do it, which is unheard of for these wines because they're extremely limited, you know, and so we're really grateful to be able to do this.
And do you know what? The people in Chicago are better off than we are because they have better distribution. We're also going to have Chicago in on this, though they're going to have 2 different wines. They're going to have the Etna Rosso, not the cru, and a different cru. So we have to make sure that we tell our friend Christian from, who's hopefully going to be calling us at his 10 p.m. from the winery on Etna. I know if you've fallen in love with anything tonight, Patrick, if we have anything left, either at the Reserve or at Plum Markets, we are happy to supply you.
And they're all available via our website. If Plum Market's out of them, we can ship anywhere in Michigan. So, you know, buy them at Plum if you're on the east side. But if you really need to, you can buy them from me.
And ditto, actually, what Patrick brought up is really terrific. You can go to, you know, the restaurant in Grand Rapids or the stores in Metro Detroit and Ann Arbor, but also you can just go to our website. And I know in the case of Plum, it will lead you to a specific store and you can do in-store pickup. So Sophia, I give you a big, real hug. Greeks don't do virtual anything. It's so real. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, very sorry for being late. The connection was today. I mean, everything went wrong, but anyway, we had to have some
You made
drama.
it right. You made it right. For la filla, and for la filla, which means lots of kisses. And cheers to everyone. And remember what we said at the beginning. Sinigasas or yasas. In Greece, it is to your health, and also hello and goodbye. And we're not going to bring any other languages in it tonight, because tonight was a celebration of the Greek spirit that welcomes everyone. Isn't that true, Sophia?
Yes.
Yes. So cheers to us
Ευχαριστώ.
navigating these times.
Bye.
Παρακαλώ. Παρακαλώ.
Good night. Bye.
See you next week.
Yes.
Madeline, thank you very much. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Madeline.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Ed.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Karim.
Sleep well, Sophia.
Thank you. You too. Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend, everyone. Thank you so much, Patrick. This was
Yeah,
special.
thank you. Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you next week, I hope.
Oh, what fun.
Saturday, not Friday. Saturday,
Thank you,
4
Sophia.
p.m. Yes, us.